The margin call comes at 6:14 a.m. before you're even fully awake, a single line on a screen that reads more like a diagnosis than a notification. You've read the sentence 3 times and it still doesn't fully land. The way bad news about your own body doesn't quite land the first time either. Somewhere in the last 12 hours while you were asleep, a position you barely remember approving lost enough value to matter, and it is, this particular morning, already too late to do anything but watch. The phone starts ringing before you've even set it back down. You let it ring twice just to have one more second of not knowing exactly how bad this is going to be. Level 8 to 7, $500 million to $150 million. The calls start before you've had coffee. Not from friends, from people whose entire job is managing exposure, and yours has just become their most urgent problem. A concentrated position, the kind that felt like conviction on the way up, now reads like negligence on the way down, and nobody on the call uses that word, but you can hear it underneath every sentence anyway. You liquidate what you can before the market fully understands what's happening, which is another way of saying you sell into a falling price, which is another way of saying you lose more than you would have if you'd simply waited and done nothing. The team that used to call you first now calls to confirm instructions. Twice in writing, a new kind of carefulness that used to be called courtesy and is now something closer to liability protection. By evening, the number is a third of what it was that morning. You keep checking it anyway, the way you keep touching a bruise to see if it still hurts. Someone asks if you're okay. You say yes out of habit before you've actually checked. Level 7 to 6, $150 million to $50 million. The assets go next, the ones that were never really about needing them. The second property, the art you bought because someone told you it was a good hedge, the interest in a fund you can no longer remember agreeing to. Selling them quietly takes months because apparently even losing money gracefully requires patience. The advisory panel seat is the first social casualty. Nobody removes you outright. You simply stop being copied on the invitations, a kind of quiet erasure that arrives with no announcement and no explanation, the institutional version of someone letting a text go unanswered. You notice before anyone confirms it. You always do. A managing director who once handled everything above a certain threshold personally now has an assistant handle you instead. The threshold, you understand without being told, has quietly moved to exclude you. You remember, with a small private wince, how certain you once were that this particular threshold would only ever move in one direction. Level 6 to 5, $50 million to $10 million. The team shrinks from an office to a single overworked accountant who used to report to someone who reported to someone who reported to you. The trust structures, built so carefully to protect what you had, now mostly protect you from the tax consequences of losing it, which feels like a joke you're not in the mood to find funny. A dinner invitation arrives, then quietly unarrives a week later, rescheduled indefinitely by someone whose assistant is suddenly harder to reach than she used to be. You tell yourself it's a scheduling conflict. You've been on the other side of enough scheduling conflicts to know better. You start doing something you haven't done in years, reading every statement line by line instead of glancing at the total and trusting it. It's slower. It's also, you admit to yourself, more honest than the glancing ever was. Level 5 to 4, $10 million to $1 million. The wealth manager's cell phone number still works, technically, but the calls go to voicemail now instead of ringing through, and the voicemail takes 2 days to return instead of 2 hours. You are still, technically, a client. You are no longer, in any way that matters, a priority. You sell the house. Not in a panic, carefully, at almost the right price to a young couple who remind you, in a way you don't say out loud, of exactly who you were at level 3, years ago, standing outside a different house you couldn't quite afford yet either. They ask you nervous questions about the roof and the plumbing. You answer them patiently, the way you wish someone had answered yours. Watching them fall in love with the house the way you once did feels, unexpectedly, like the least painful part of the entire year. Level 4 to 3, $1 million to $250,000. You go back to work, not because anyone is forcing you to, but because the alternative, living on savings that are visibly shrinking every month you don't, has stopped being something you can politely ignore. The job you take is a step down from the one you left, and the person interviewing you is roughly the age you were when you started building any of this in the first place. You catch yourself in the parking lot afterward, doing math you haven't done in years, rent, this bill, that bill, and the specific shame of it isn't the math itself. It's how quickly the muscle memory came back, as if it had just been waiting, patiently, the whole time, for exactly this moment. Level 3 to 2, $250,000 to $50,000. The calls from the bank change their tone again, this time in reverse. The personal banker's replacement, younger, careful, reading from a slightly different script, mentions gently that certain fees can no longer be waived as a courtesy. You almost laugh. You don't explain why. You start doing the thing you used to do years ago in stores. Checking a price before you reach for it, a reflex you thought you'd retired for good, and it comes back not like relearning a skill, but like remembering you never actually forgot it. The coat from level 3 hangs in the closet still, slightly out of season, slightly too good for where you are now. Level 2 to 1, $50,000 to $0. The last of it goes quietly, the way most real endings do. Not a single dramatic collapse, just a slow, uneventful series of Tuesdays where the number gets smaller until, one morning, it stops being a number worth checking twice. You open the app before rent hits, the way you used to, years before any of this, and the balance on the screen reads $3. Exactly the number you started with. A coincidence so precise it feels engineered, though you know, rationally, that it isn't. The kitchen is different. The city might even be different. The $3 are exactly the same. You have, in every practical sense, been here before. You remember, with total clarity, what came after the last time. The 18 months you can barely recall living through, the emergency fund you were almost too scared to touch, the coat, the watch, the summit in a city you didn't choose. None of that is guaranteed to happen again. But you know, now, in a way you didn't the first time, that the story isn't finished just because the number says 0. You almost say the number out loud to no one, just to hear how ordinary it sounds now compared to how it sounded the very first time. It's just back to where it started. If you've made it this far, hit subscribe. There's more of this coming.